the California MBA DE&I Podcast. I'm your host, Ty Christensen, and I'm the co-founder and chief diversity officer for Arrive Home. Arrive Home is a social enterprise that facilitates home ownership through our national down payment assistance offerings and our special purpose credit programs for non-traditional borrowers. Thanks so much for joining us today. First, I want to start off by thanking our generous sponsor, PCB Mercor. They are a nationwide real estate valuations management company. We appreciate your continued sponsorship and support of this podcast. Today, I would like to introduce my guest, Ike Suri. Ike is the chairman and CEO at FundingShield, a fintech preventing cyber, wire, title fraud to manage risk. Ike joined the California MBA as a board member late last year, and he also serves on the MBA Risk Committee and the MBA Fraud Committee. So Ike, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. How are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
Doing great.
Awesome. Well, I'm really interested to talk to you today about your story. You immigrated from India at 19 years old as a young adult. So can you kind of tell us a little bit about your immigration story and what your experience was like adjusting to the United States as a young adult?
Sure. Being that I was a minority in India, I was born in a religiously inclined family of a Sikh family, Sikhism, which is less than 1% of the population in India, and maybe less than 1%, fifth largest in the world, but still very small population of this religion. Anyway, coming to US was very exciting, and I had a wonderful time integrating with the society and friends who embraced me in the US, coming from one democracy, which is the largest in population, to the largest GDP democracy here in the States. A number of commonalities exist: diversity, people from all over the world, immigration, and the freedom to do what you want. So I had a great time being embraced, creating new friends, the opportunity that the land provides, the business provides. Of course, there are elements of discrimination, and they will always exist. Where there's a head, there's a tail. It's a matter of just surrounding yourself with folks that are optimistic, open, find humanity as the first calling, and the rest is just man-made. So I had a wonderful time. I could point out that, there's no other place like US where the openness, the foundation is such that it allows people to integrate, embrace the opportunities, deliver on them. And it comes with its challenges, but without challenges, there is no easy way to move forward.
So can you tell me a little bit about the differences versus the US versus India as far as being diverse nations, accepting diverse peoples, being culturally diverse? What do you find is the biggest differences between the two countries?
There's plenty, especially with the last 5-7 years that the country's gone through this whole woke, experience. So there's, each country comes with its own issues, right? So India is a land that's 10,000 years old, but the youngest large democracy, 75 years being independent.
It's 10,000 years old?
Somewhere close to that, as far as going back to Indus civilization and so on.
As an American, I often struggle I remember the very first time we went to Europe and we were standing in the Roman Pantheon, and it was something like 500 BC, and I couldn't even get my brain to do the math. We're such a young nation. So that's right. That's incredible.
That's right. It is. So if I'm off by 10,000 years, it's thousands of years, because it's one of those historical, civilizations from what you have in the Middle East, to Mesopotamia, to Egyptian, to Indian. They're all very old, right? And Aztecs. Anyway, the country itself as a democracy is only 75 years young, with 1.4 billion people. So it has gone through its own challenges of taking this huge population, huge adversity and diversity, putting it under one umbrella, allowing all religions and castes of the historical times and languages to coexist in harmony. And of course, there's a lot of friction. You learn from that, from the old days and ongoing current and events of what's happening. And I think you see the same here in the States. It's a younger country, but the oldest democracy. And it is going through what America has done best. I use that word, failing forward. America has gone through so many challenges from recessions to wars to immigrations to selective immigration to open immigration. But again, the foundation being such that when it finds itself at fault, it only accepts it in front of the world and corrects it to move forward. It's a fine example to the rest of the world. There are countries out there that might take, a jab at US from the last few years of like, oh, how wrong is what's going on in US? But US is not hiding that. US is exposing it for the good of the people and the world, and to move forward by correcting it.
Yes.
And the same kind of applies to a country like India, which I saw had to deal with very large population and not having easy governance of deploying equality in a manner and eliminating discrimination and so on, and had to deal with bureaucracy and heavy baggage of the past, but still moving forward and slowly taking the advantages of people participating in voting and selecting and moving forward. So there's a lot of differences, but at the same time, a lot of similarities.
Oh, that's so incredible to hear. I often call Americans the teenagers of the world. We're brash, we think we know everything, we're loud, we're obnoxious, but we are continually learning and evolving and trying to better ourselves and become a more sophisticated person or country. We're very teenagerish in our ways.
Very true.
Okay, so being a diverse person brings diverse perspective to the table. What do you think is the primary benefit to having a diverse executive team or C-suite business partners? I know you've run a lot of companies. Again, you're CEO of FundingShield. You've had a lot of work experience. We talked off mic, guys, for about an hour last week, and his work experience, we would be here for 2 hours if we were just reviewing his resume. But take it from me, he has a lot of experience in business. He's very successful and he's worked with a lot of diverse teams. So what do you think diversity really does bring to the table?
A lot. Diversity, the definition of diversity is not just the people's skin or religion or background. It is also how they approach a problem and what they have experienced in life, regardless of all those undermining tones of describing people. So it could be age. Someone could be much more experienced by age, but not as experienced in technology and deploying technology. So diversity comes from all different angles. So the more diverse your leadership team is, you get to solve a problem as a collaborative unit from all different angles. One might be able to see a systemic flaw on discrimination, such as redlining and so on, that we've dealt with in mortgage industry now. The other could be dealing with the FICO scores on how we're measuring success on just simple elements of expenditure, but ignoring major parts of those as they're adjusting now for providing equality and housing equality, right? Yes. So diversity brings all of that. It brings, the younger generation might be bringing optimization quicker than what the past generation was unable to because the technology didn't exist.
Yes.
So diversity comes from all different angles, and it comes from age, experience, backgrounds, religious background too, because it's an asset. It's not a something of a liability. All of those differences are assets, and when put together, the blend is just a great smoothie.
Oh my gosh, I love what you say about just the varying differences between income and FICO scores, et cetera. People of color use FICO and credit in a very different way than your average white consumer. And there's a lot of nuances in our cultural communities that if you don't have great representation, you don't really know that, right?
That's right.
And so I think that that's great that you've had that experience in your very long career.
Yeah, the voice of everyone is heard when you've got diversity. And it's just like being in kindergarten. You see kids from all different backgrounds and you're all working towards the same soccer goal when you're running to the ball, right?
Yeah.
So in business, it applies the same. The commonality of differences leads to a joint solution, not leaving anybody behind.
And I think a lot of times, just kind of speaking about diversity for a minute, I know people put a lot of emphasis on where you go to college, and you have a very great college career as well. Where did you go to school?
Rutgers.
Right. In New Jersey, where I'm from. But I think that you need a nice mix of junior college representation, as elite college representation, maybe even community college representation at the table, so that you, to your earlier point, have a lot of different vantage points. Your vantage point going to a community college is going to be very different than someone that went to Brown or went to Penn State. but both perspectives are needed to create programs that can help a large swath of the American population. So you've owned a number of businesses, as we talked about, and you've been integral in building many businesses as well. What would you say is a business accomplishment you are most proud of?
Oh boy, that's a tough one. I mean, there's no one. I think progress. You're a progress in making every day, and I think having had the ability to get an opportunity in the U.S. And then global puts you in a position where you appreciate whatever you can accomplish as a next step up. So I've got many. I wouldn't say there's one in particular, but being able to contribute towards anything that makes progress for the masses, be it from the mortgage industry perspective or technology, or be it from nonprofit perspective, I take pride in all of them.
Well, that's awesome. Last question for you that I ask all of my guests. If you could give your younger self, one piece of advice, and your younger self would listen to your older self and take the advice, what would be the one piece of advice you would give your younger self?
I would say we get lost with our ambitions and goals, that we lose ourselves into it, which is not a bad thing. It's a healthy thing, but balance is quite important. And when it's balance, I would say happiness isn't just the most important thing in life. It's the only thing that matters. So if you've got decent balance, I would say maintain balance throughout your different challenges in life.
How do you find balance right now? You've got children, you've got a wife, you've got a very robust career. What do you do to find balance in your life so that you're not getting too out of whack in one direction or another?
I think your value system matters. Ensuring that moderation is key. You know, too much sugar gets you diabetes. Yeah. So too much money is only going to get you spoiled. Yeah. So having a decent balance towards being an all-rounder is what I grew up. My mom's directive was that, be an all-rounder, not just focus on one thing by itself. So make sure you eat all what is on your plate, from veggies to the meat and so on. Same thing applies to life. I think you got to be balanced in work, home, hobbies, and other aspects of what keeps you balanced. So you got to make time for it. That's the challenge.
Yes. Well, I love we are going to continue to fail forward and find all around balance in our lives. That's the marching orders for this podcast.
I'm glad you took that.
Yeah, and I'm glad you gave us that information. So thank you so much for making time for us today. We are very honored to have you as part of our California MBA board. We appreciate the time you've taken with us and the wisdom you've given us today. And that's today's podcast, guys. Thank you so very much. And we will see you all next month. Bye.
Thanks for having me, Ty. Thank you.